Well, and how many stories do you not hear anymore? Like, I feel like millennials were the last ones where I heard, like, oh, I was the first kid to go to college in my family. I was the one who, like, broke that pattern and had the opportunity to get out and do other things. And I don't know that our systems are designed to help that happen anymore. I think a bunch of people think education makes you an elite, snobbist, whatever, and therefore it's better actually to just continue following in the situation you're in. It's like, no, what, like, why did the American dream stop being a better life for my kids? Why is now the American dream, well, I suffered and therefore you should too? Like, it's insane.
It is funny how it's shrinking, right? Because it used to be like, I'm getting ahead for my kids. And now it's become, I don't have enough money for retirement. So it's
Right.
like, like getting them through school and leaving something for them and the inheritance, like you're hoping to. But I'm like, I can't worry about you. I'm actually considering like, I'm too late for it now, but I should have got them all on a contract, which is the first 10 years of working, you pay me something back, right? Like, you owe me, you little bastards.
That's also a weird American thing, which is like so many cultures, kids live at home until they're 25 and decide to get married. Like, our culture chooses to inflict a bunch of weird burdens in both directions, and it's bizarre.
Hey, my brother's listening. He's still at home. Now, granted, it's a nice home. He lived in Spain with my parents, but he's what? Sonny,
Nice.
how old are you? You're 50 now? Yeah, you're about 50. But no, he's got it right. He's waiting for him to die, and then he'll get the house. Smart bastard. Good job, Sonny. Good idea.
Nice.
But yeah, no, yeah, what a strange life.
It is. Welcome to Acceptance Criteria, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of how software gets made and how we can all do a better job together. My name is Kevin Thomas Euland, and across the chat from me is Andrew Greener. Say hi, Andrew.
Hi, Andrew. We're also here to get deeper on the human elements. I could go on for an eternity about people and how they think about the process of building complex systems. And I can't think of two better people to do that than Kevin and I.
Fortunately, we're looking for third opinions, so if you've got a topic you'd like to come discuss or rant about, drop us a note and we'll see if we can get you on a future episode. You can go to acceptancepod.com/guest and submit your ideas. And a quick reminder, whether this is your first episode or you've been listening for a while, we wouldn't say no to your going and dropping 5 stars on Apple Podcast or Spotify and leaving us a nice review. And if you want to leave us a bad review, remember the name of the podcast is New Heights. Also tell your friends if you like the show and they should check us out. Some of the best podcasts out there go by word of mouth and we much appreciate it.
And a friendly reminder that we are always interested in hearing questions directly from you, our listeners, especially for our segment user stories. If you've got a scenario you'd like help with, whether it's working with a problematic engineering or product team member, trying to navigate the never-ending pitfalls with agile processes, or you just can't understand why your favorite app is evolving away from what drew you to it in the first place, we're here to talk it through with you. You can send those questions to acceptancepod@gmail.com or submit them on the Discord in the user stories channel, and we might be able to help on a future episode. And we're happy to keep it anonymous so no one can trace it back to you if you end up talking a coworker or something.
On this week's show, we'll be talking over some recent news stories from the world of tech. Blah, blah, banter.
Blah, blah, banter. Yes, the news. It moves so fast.
I mean, that's the thing. And the next 4 years is going to be insane just in politics, much less in tech is just getting crazier and crazier.
And AI, man, for all of your posturing and
awful.
doubts, it is taking over.
It's in every story at this point.
It is. And it's happening.
I was browsing through it was either TechCrunch or The Verge. Like, every other story was just an AI story. I was like, there's other technology out there, guys. You could invest in other things. You know that, right?
Yeah, but it's happening.
It's awful.
Was it Google CEO or someone the other day was talking? No, it might have been the OpenAI guys, but they were talking, and it's nice to hear when one of them's slightly honest about like the future, where it's like it's gonna be nuanced, right? Like.
Oh no, they're here for your jobs.
Oh, yeah.
They don't want to pay workers.
Yeah.
They want the machine to do it. They will spend billions of dollars now so that they don't have to spend trillions of dollars for the next 40 years.
Yeah, it's happening so fast.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But before we get to all of that, let's take a short break and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back. This is a segment we like to call Market Factors, where we talk about industry news stories and trends we're observing. Mostly it's an excuse to rag on bad decisions and argue with each other whether some new piece of tech is worth it. So I'm going to start with a year-old story. For no particular reason, we'll figure out why I brought this up in a moment. So from November of 2023, UnitedHealthcare uses faulty AI to deny elderly patients medically necessary coverage, lawsuit claims. The lawsuit filed last Tuesday in federal court in Minnesota claims UnitedHealth illegally denied elderly patients care owed to them under Medicare Advantage plans by deploying an AI model known by the company. UnitedHealthcare knew that this model had a 90% error rate. And in case I didn't enunciate that correctly, that's 90% error rate was known by the company to be a very, 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 very bad model. It overrode determinations made by the patient's physicians that the expenses were medically necessary. Quote, the elderly are prematurely kicked out of care facilities nationwide or forced to deplete family savings to continue receiving necessary medical care, all because UnitedHealth's AI model disagrees with real-life doctors' determinations, according to the complaint. So this would be a normal AI story had we been doing the podcast in November of 2023, and is pretty bad. Is a pretty bad example of companies deciding to outsource to AI models things that they shouldn't. Insurance is already bad enough injecting itself in between you and your doctor, and this one is pretty egregious. There's an article from the Boston Globe talking about how UnitedHealthcare denies the most claims of any major health insurer. The company dismissed about 1 in every 3 claims in the year 2023, the most of any major insurer. That's twice the industry average of 16%, according to data that was collected from what is this, Value Penguin? Which, why would you name yourself Value Penguin if you're trying to be a serious arbiter of important information? But it's a group that does analysis based on in-network data claims from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So why are we bringing all of this up? Because the UnitedHealthcare CEO was murdered in pretty much broad daylight. I think it was fairly early in the morning, so early daylight in Manhattan last week. And the NYPD, if you've seen the videos on TikTok of them sort of lazily poking at bushes in Central Park, is doing as good a job as NYPD can do. They haven't found the guy yet. And a guy went ahead and murdered the CEO of UnitedHealthcare. The things that were written or etched onto the bullet casings that they found on the site were the words delay, deny, defend. And that is the sort of rallying cry of the groups who are trying to find ways to reform the health insurance industry, because those are the tactics that health insurance companies use to not actually cover the things that your doctors think are necessary for your care. So I guess we will say murder's bad. Murder's bad. Yep. I don't think, anyone should think that violence is the answer to anything. ... Like,
Yeah.
this is the natural end of where this capitalist system is taking us. There's a New Yorker article I linked here. A man was murdered in cold blood and you're laughing. And it was an article talking about social media's response to the murder of the CEO has been pretty harsh, pretty bad, considering Americans' reactions to the state of the healthcare system. A lot of the thoughts were like, thoughts and prayers pending, a prior approval coverage. It's pretty bad that things have gotten to the point that, yeah, a guy's dead, he's got a family, and they're mourning right now, but the reaction of there are thousands of people whose families are denied coverage every day, every year in this country, and they die. Like, health insurance kills people in this country by denying claims, and we are offering thoughts and prayers for just this one family just today, when we don't really think about the cost of capitalism's hooks in the healthcare industry. And UnitedHealthcare is, as we just talked about, the poster boy for horrifying decisions and rejection rates and the state of the health insurance industry at this point.
Yeah, it's funny. It actually reminded me. It just reminded me now what you were talking about the movie. I can't remember the name. It's got a weird name, but it's not that old. But it features a woman who is becoming the custodian for old people and basically
Okay.
ripping them off, right? And then spoiler, but I don't know the name of the movie, but she gets shot dead, right? And
Sure.
I'm actually tacking this one on as my first. This is the first, I'm going to hazard and say this is the first instance since we've sort of talked about the gap and AI and the
Sure.
changing. And the funny thing is that, yeah, it's a hard one, right? Because nobody condones the murder. But at some point, when you leave the people with no option because the government's not dealing with it, there's no like, you sue, you're going to die before the lawsuits are paid out, right,
Right.
if you win. So
Right.
this is what happens when you sort of lock people in a corner, right? And that's what the gap will essentially do. Like, it's going to take the jobs, and we're not going to have post scarcity in time for those people in their lives, right? And
Right.
people are done being pushed around, and it's not a new thing, right? Like, because we saw it with Pelosi's husband. Was Pelosi, right? Pelosi's husband
Pelosi's husband was
attacked
attacked.
with a
Yeah.
hammer in the house. So people have, it was funny, right? There were school shootings, mass shootings, and now people are like, wait a minute, I can actually get to the guys who I couldn't get to before, right? Like I can get a CEO, right? I can follow them. I figure out their schedule, and off you go, right? So it's going to be interesting with this because they trend, right? Like, you got the first mass shooter. We all think of Columbine. There was ones before that, but then you get the copycats, and then it becomes a way of life to the point where you have hundreds of mass shootings a year in your country, and you don't even, it's on CNN for a day, right? And then it's gone because the next news is out. So
Yep.
I actually think we're just at the beginning here. I think people
I
are going to be
mean,
like, that's how I have to deal with it. Like, if the government don't step in and there's no
right.
legal recourse, this is what I have to do to get my payback.
We continuously reinvent the guillotine. It doesn't always look like the
That's
guillotine. I think
right.
it's only ever once looked at the guillotine, but we basically, and they're fortunate that in the 1930s, the guillotine was federal law
Yeah.
and was actually, a bloodless version, but it's pitchforks and torches and in all different variations. And yeah, of course, this is the thing. A bunch of websites are taking down their leadership, and you can't find the names of who the CEOs are on company websites anymore, and the like entire executive team. And it's like, guys, that's not how the internet works. LinkedIn is out there, the Internet Archive is out there, although conservatives are trying to shut down the Internet Archive. There's a bunch of, yeah, this is possibly the starting signs, like you're saying, of the new normal of, and the question is, does it actually result in change? The current system, as bought and paid for by this executive class, is simply going to hire more security, lock themselves away in even further gated communities than there already are. The answer to this is going to be the executives of these companies are already insulated from public opinion and from interacting with the people whose lives they have control over. And this is only going to further re-entrench that. They are going to burrow in deeper into their wealth and away from public opinion and away from interfacing with the public. And there's a quote here from the New Yorker article that I pulled out. Of course, the solution in the end can't be indifference, not indifference to the death of the CEO and not the celebration of it either, but who's going to drop their indifference first. At this point, it's not going to be the people who have a lifetime of evidence that health insurance CEOs do not care about their well-being. Can the CEO class drop its indifference to the suffering and death of ordinary people? Is it possible to do so while achieving record quarterly profits for your stakeholders in perpetuity? And this is the core central tension of what you've called the gap, or the sting, or both. And yeah, I don't know what the solution is, because it either is decades and decades of oligarchy and
Yeah.
suffering by the working class people, the guillotine shows up, or the government steps in and realizes this has to end. But there was an article just the other day, we have exceeded the Gilded Age in wealth disparity for the first time. And so we are back in the 1890s, basically. And the 1890s was full of unions revolting and getting shot by the cops because the law enforcement is on the side of wealth and capitalism and not on the side of workers. And it seems like it's going to be, I don't know, this is a bummer of an opening to this episode because it's a harsh reality. We're heading into some questionable times right now.
Probably for me, though, it's the most exciting of times because it's the precipice, right? Like, that's the problem for me, right? Is like, I will consistently come back to, yeah, my future has more dead people in than yours, right? Because
Yeah, it's bad.
my future is
Right.
based on, yeah, CEOs. I think we believe we've reached this level of civilization where you can keep pushing back on society and we won't become uncivilized. You know what? It's like my one of my mentors used to say, look, we get along really well, but what we would do to each other for that last bottle of water for our kids,
Right.
it's unspeakable. And we would do it for the last bottle of water for our kids, right? We would do that to each other. And I don't think these people realize that you can only push so far. I mean, the people are hurting already. And then, yeah, this is just the beginning, I guarantee. Like,
And that's supposed to be the whole point of the modern Western world, and the thing it is supposed to model to the rest of the world of, we stopped the wild, wild west. We stopped the fighting for the resources. We put a structure in place that allowed everybody to come together and make sure you never have to fight each other for the last, I mean, you shouldn't be drinking bottled water. Water should be free and good. But, the point being, that was the whole point of Western democracy, and like this weird thing. And there's plenty of people, I have friends who are probably right now being like, we had this figured out in Eastern cultures for centuries. But like, the myth we were taught as kids in Western cultures is, we solved this. We put rule of law in place. And I think there's two parts of that. One, the recognition of, you actually read the histories, and we had minor blips where that was actually true for everyone. Most of the time it wasn't true for everyone. It was true for a ruling elite who could know that they could walk down the street without fear of being, challenged to a duel and shot. But in theory, the American dream we were promised was that kind of safety and security, and knowing that that was possible. And I'll point out, it was through collective group action, not through rugged individualism. And I think we're starting to realize a lot of that was a bit of a myth we had through a blip we've lived in. And unless we decide to go back to, we all live in the same culture and have to abide by the same rules, you can earn 100 times the amount that your employees earn, but you can't earn 3,000 times the amount your employees earn. Yeah, I don't know. It's bleak out there.
yeah, yeah, people are pissed. People are mad.
They should be.
Yeah.
No one. There was a comment on Twitter that was like, I would never give up my private family plan for universal healthcare because Medicare is terrible. And it's like, that is the comment of a person who's never once had a medical thing. That's the comment of a person who's never needed a prescription. That's the comment of a person who has never needed a referral to a specialist. You cannot exist a single day in this system of the U.S. healthcare system and think that there is anything good or salvageable about it. The solution to the US healthcare system is a full teardown. I think at some point, maybe the episode we do with Mandeville is talking about his year in Texas, trying to figure out how to solve the US healthcare system with technology, and realizing the insane interdependency of, you're not allowed to charge this because of this federal regulation, but the board of, the shareholders of the hospital network need to get their money's worth, so a box of Kleenex becomes a nasal mucus removal system and gets charged $425. And like, all of these weird things, it's a weird interdependency between the federal government not willing to spend enough money to really support it, private insurance, doctors, hospital networks. It's a messed up web of, that's why no one wants to try to solve it.
Yeah, it's funny. One of my friends, a great CTO, he was working at a startup, and he was telling me the idea. Like, there's basically these sort of decision trees around treatment, and they wanted to create a pool so that the insurance, the medical centers that stayed closest to the treatment plans could be rewarded, with a pool of money, right? So that
Which is what insurance is supposed to be. We're all supposed to pay in, and then, right.
the challenge they had was, one of the clinics were like, no, we won't make as much money, and if you do that,
Right.
we'll just move state, right? We'll move out of the county, and we'll go somewhere else. It's like, so, and basically my friend said to me, he's like, so they'd rather commit fraud
Mhm.
than do something the right way, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's hard, man. It's hard being an advocate for big business when, yeah, they're basically raping the American people. It's the same reason
Yeah.
I pick on Brits. Is there's a tipping point where your country starts to exploit you. The Brits are exploited. You go to the gas pump and you're like, are you kidding me? One day in England, you pump gas, you need to leave. Like, if you don't leave after buying gas in England, you're insane. So the people, to me, the people there are just exploited, and I think it's not that far away here, depending on health insurance right now. I mean,
Gas is the wrong example. Gas should be so prohibitively expensive it drives people to mass transit so we can, anyway. Gas is not a
that's
good
fine. I
example
know
of,
you want
yeah.
to save the trees,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like, I could fill a minivan. It's $120, $150.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Take the train. Take the train.
It's not that easy though in the UK because you're gonna get mugged.
Oh my God, it's so
But you're gonna get
easy in the
mugged. So
UK.
when
You're not gonna get
you're gonna
mugged
get
on the
mugged, you're gonna get
train. You're not
stabbed,
gonna get mugged on the
you're gonna
train
get
from
stabbed.
King's Cross to
Somebody's
Edinburgh.
gonna steal your car radio. Somebody's
No,
gonna
your
burgle
car
your
radio
house.
on the subway. Yeah.
Britain is incredibly violent. So anyway, but
Uh-huh.
I'm just saying.
Okay. Now, part of the reason, once again, we'll come back to all problems are solved because poverty drives people to do things. You all could solve poverty and reduce violence and crime immediately, but that's a topic capitalism doesn't want to deal with because we got to make sure that the billionaires get a couple extra billions. Should we move on to the next story? Anything else we want to say
I'm just
about
reading that second
thoughts and
one.
prayers?
The man was murdered in cold blood. It's hard, so hard. Like it's such a weird emotion to be feeling where you're like, told you so.
Right.
Like
This is the thing is it's like, yes, thoughts and prayers to that family. That's as much as you're willing to give every single
yeah.
there's a quote about as soon as we let kindergarteners be murdered at Sandy Hook, the gun control debate was over. We have just accepted that gun deaths are a thing, and the people reacting, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the New Yorker, there's a whole media class right now wringing their hands over how vile and terrible the social media reaction has been to this. And it's like, guys, that is the reaction to every gun death in this country from you. You all don't care about the fact that kindergarteners were murdered. You don't care about the Uvalde classroom. This country has decided the value of life is very little. And so we're going to do the NYPD response to trying to track down this Timothy Chalamet lookalike. Kevin from the future just hopping in while editing this episode to say we clearly recorded this before they caught the alleged guy in the McDonald's in Pennsylvania, and had that happened, I obviously would have said this Dave Franco lookalike. All right, back to the episode. Is ridiculously outsized compared to, it's because he's at the top of a capitalist structure. He's a corporate executive who is worth a lot of money and has a lot of power, and therefore the NYPD is going to expend a ton of resources to try to catch his murderer. It was very public, but we don't provide that equivalent response to every other gun death. So yeah, thoughts and prayers to the man's wife and kids. Where is the sympathy for all other gun deaths in the country? Where is the sympathy for all of the other deaths caused by the health insurance industry who prioritize profit over the health care of the people they're supposed to be insuring? So yes, I will hold 1% of my brain for this guy. 99% of my brain is focused on the people this guy negatively impacted. And I'm sorry that sucks, but that's the system he was part of and that he was a key factor in upholding. So yeah, it's a crappy day.
Yeah, it's just the beginning, I'm afraid. I think we're going to see a lot more unhinged people. And actually, the gun debate, like you Democrats want to come and take them all away, right? But actually,
if the shooter hadn't had such easy access to a gun, or your precious little CEO would still be alive.
But the shooter and the rebels who are going to either...
The rebels.
The rebels who are going to be starving and losing their houses. And if the gap happens, if the sting...
Mm-hmm.
That's how the people are going to push back, right? Like it's to me.
Sure,
there's a period of my future which is bleak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even anyway, the militarization of the police is a whole topic. There is no Syrian rebel army that gets formed by, it doesn't matter, you're always going to be outgunned by the ridiculous armed vehicles that the police have spent the last 2 decades arming themselves with, much less the National Guard, much less the army.
But you don't need to take over the country. You need to cause enough emotional and financial damage, right, for it to be a conversation.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying is the likelihood that this turns into, what's the guy's name? Bob's Law, and Bob's Law is people who are in charge of executive decisions for people's lives are in a special class of, this is now a hate crime, and we protect them and they get special police escorts. And what this turns into is the structures of government protecting the capitalist system, not actually dealing with why people are this upset. I don't know. These guys are going to go buy 5 more private jets and private security companies and be escorted from every building that they come in and out of anytime they have to go near the public. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I was waiting for something like this too. For a long time, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. Other people say it, right? Is the crazies will kill the right person at some point to to be the catalyst to the next conversation. And that'll happen a bunch of times, right? So someone went after politicians, and we've always had presidents who've been shot and killed or attempted assassinations, but it was different in the past. It felt different. Now it feels like, oh, it feels like you say something on a podcast and now you wonder, like, is someone going to figure out where I live? Come and get me? Right? Like,
I mean, that's been the reality for the past decade for women and minorities.
yeah.
The amount of doxing, Gamergate, all of that nonsense has been toxic white men backlashing against their perceived reduction in size and scope of their influence in society. That's been a thing that a bunch of people have already been facing. Now, a bunch of white dudes feel like they're under that same threat, and they're not going to solve it for everyone. They're going to solve it for themselves.
And what I'm going to say right now, hopefully someone hears it and in the future I get the reference for this as being not the first person to publicly say it, but I think what people are going to realize is the assumption was you had to be crazy to kill somebody. Actually, I think you just have to piss them off enough and anybody's capable. And that was my ex-bosses and mentors point was, we're not killers today, but if it's for the last bottle of water, you better believe we're killing. And I think what we're starting to see now is, sort of my own party's argument is we don't need to do anything about the guns. We need to do something about crazy people. And actually, the scary part is I think with the hate and the narrative in this country right now is technically there's a lot more crazy people because they're so angry and on edge that they will do stuff like this with no history of crazy. There's no mental disorder. It's premeditated, it's planned, it's well thought. It's not a crazy person.
If anything, I mean, John Wilkes Booth had a reason for
He
doing it.
did.
There was no mental health crisis there. A bunch of the guys in the 1890s were like, there was an actual political reason for it. Then Kennedy, who knows what Oswald was doing, communist or not, who knows. So Oswald's a weird one. Saran going after RFK, that's a weird one, I think. Hinckley going after Reagan was mental illness, trying to impress Jodie Foster. The guy going after Trump, the kid who went after Trump, was mentally disturbed kid who Trump and Biden were both candidates for him, and he just picked the one that was nearer to him. So this actually, like, most of the time when this has happened in the past, I don't know, like, it's not a mental health thing. It's a targeted, I don't know, it's gonna be weird.
Yeah. Booth was pretty smart. They were going after two people, right? Was it two? They had two or three targets, right, that night?
That I don't know, actually. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure, didn't
Hmm.
they either shot and he later died. I mean, he obviously later died at some point, but I'm pretty sure they attempted to assassinate a governor that night too. There was two of them, right?
I don't know. I don't, if that's true, that's not a thing I remember hearing about in,
Yeah, maybe. I'll have to go back and bone up on my American history of assassinations. But
sure.
I thought there were a couple of them, and I thought they got somebody else that night too. But
Interesting. All right, should we move on to slightly happier news?
yes, happier news.
So, the US Department of Justice has demanded that Google sell the Chrome browser, the world's most popular web browser, in a bid to end their search monopoly. The government lawyers also recommended that District Judge Amit Mehta force the firm to stop entering into contracts with companies, including Apple and Samsung, that make its search engine the default on many smartphones and browsers. The proposed remedies stem from a landmark anti-competition ruling in August in which Judge Mehta found Google illegally crushed its competition in online search. And I think this is a fascinating example of yes, good. Crush these monopolies. Google is a bad company that is stagnated. Google search has fully enshittified itself. For those who don't know, enshittification is a term that was coined a couple of years ago that happens in monopolies. Internet Explorer 6 being the perfect example of what happens when you stagnate. Anyone who's tried to search anything on Google lately, you know that the answer is you need to put the word Reddit in there so that you can get the Reddit answers, because Google search results are full of AI nonsense, either from Google directly or through a bunch of sites that have created AI schlock to fill up Google results. Google's in bad in terms of the quality of its products, and I don't know that breaking up the monopoly is going to solve anything, but this is good. Google should suffer some consequences. The ironic thing here is when Microsoft had to face these consequences in the early 2000s, the proposal of splitting out Office into its own company and basically doing an AT&T Ma Bell split up could have worked. Office had its own revenue. Office could have survived. No one is going to try, like, no one's one's going to acquire Chrome. Chrome is a money loser for Google. The only reason Chrome is a thing is for Google to try to keep you in their ecosystem and try to get you into search results and get ad revenue. Google Chrome is kind of like Firefox. Firefox is a good browser, but I don't know how Firefox makes money. Firefox just laid off a bunch of people because it's hard to make money in a free browser ecosystem. No one wants Chrome. So it's good because Google shouldn't have that much control over your life. I don't know that, yes, punish Google, but no one wants Chrome. I don't know how that's going to actually work.
Yeah, I'm on Google's side here.
Of
Of
course you
course I
are.
am. Yeah, I do not. I'm not totally down with the DOJ and the whole monopoly thing. I don't get it, right? Like Google came along and changed. I mean, they invented search.
How dare you? Alta Vista invented search.
Nobody would be anywhere without them. They created distributed data architecture, right? Like somebody else would
And
have
then
done it, but
they abused their success. They used their success to thwart innovation. If you're a capitalist, you want open free markets. You want competition. You don't see, this is the problem. Republicans aren't actual pure. What's the guy who invented capitalism? What's his name? What do I want to say? Who invented
Ponzi.
capitalism? Adam Smith. If you were a true adherent to Adam Smith, the Ponzi joke is good. If you were a true adherent to Adam Smith and true open free market capitalism, monopolies are bad. Monopolies stifle your ability to enter a market and compete. And so you should want antitrust things. And this is where
It's
Republicans
not.
aren't actually
Yeah.
capitalists. You are monopolists. You are people who want power consolidated into yourselves. And if you want to be, this is the thing, if you want to be the next millionaire, you want antitrust rules giving you the opportunity to compete. And companies like Google should face consequences for abusing their power. They don't get a credit chip for the fact that we did cool technology that you all benefit from. Therefore, we get a free pass in abusing the markets we control. No, that's bad. You should want, if their technology continues to be better than yours, they will win by market forces, but they're not letting the market exert its own force. It's bad.
Nah.
You're not a natural capitalist. You're a Republican.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just, like if you're going into business, you should just
There's special categories that you shouldn't try to compete.
stop. You should just look and you're like, wait, it's Google. I can't compete with them. Just stop. Let Google do their thing.
This is my concern with AI. There's going to be 3 companies who have the resources to actually do all of this, and we're going to be locked in, and it's bad for people. It's always bad. Was Internet Explorer 6 a good browser at the end?
No.
Right, because the Microsoft's monopoly power let them sit on their laurels, lock everyone into a piece of crap, and they stopped innovating. Google has stopped innovating. Name the last good thing that Google did.
I mean, I don't need to.
It's bad for you as a consumer.
it's
It's bad for you as a consumer. Why are you not a good consumer? Why are you not frustrated that Gmail hasn't done anything new? Email is dead. Where's the
because
innovation?
it just works, man. Like the search just works.
It doesn't. Search doesn't
It's
work
the
anymore.
best-
You clearly aren't searching
It's
for
the
anything.
best homepage to start with. Like it's changed the way
You don't get answers to anything
I
anymore.
do.
You clearly are not
I
actually
do.
searching
I
for
mean,
things.
I don't go to a lot of different websites anymore, right? Like I kind of know what things
Uh-huh.
are, right? Like, oh, I need code, I go here. Oh, I need this, I go there. So I'm
Uh-huh.
not really searching. I want to buy something, I go to Amazon, right? So Google, I'm not using that much anyway. I'm using ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT as much as I use Google these days, but it's great. It still works as good as it ever did. The results are fine.
You are in the minority
Oh
opinion at this point.
no.
Yeah.
No, I'd say I'm in the minority of techies. I'm in the minority of techies, but the everyday person does not notice Google's deterioration of quality. The average Joe, the people who voted for the guy that you can't stand, they
Yeah.
don't care about Google's quality. They don't.
But this is the problem being in a monopolistic ecosystem. They don't know that there could be anything better because competitors aren't allowed to
Wait
enter
a
the
minute,
market.
wait a minute.
This is no. This is capitalism 101. You should have choice. And by having choice, you realize that this company over here is stagnated. You're making my argument for me, which
No.
is the people haven't noticed that Google's gotten worse because they have nothing to compare it to. That is how capitalism works.
Do you think in the current climate, based on the last few weeks' news, that American people, when they know there's a better choice, will choose the better choice? That's not accurate.
So you're saying capitalism is fundamentally broken.
Yeah.
Giving consumers choice is bad.
Everything that we hold so dear is fundamentally broken. Yeah.
Sure, and that's a result of authoritarian fascist tendencies within the capitalist structure to take choice away from people and make them into good, compliant little sheep. The Republican project for 40 years has been to convince them that the media is lying to them, to only trust Republican sources, to not believe education and other facts, and all you do is listen to Dear Leader, and Dear Leader tells you what is true, and you're in a communist system. The irony of the Republican Party turning into North Korea is lost on most people who are drinking happily from the slop that's fed to them by the Republican media ecosystem. And it's idiocracy. It is Wall-E on the ship.
Yeah,
It's bad for
it
everyone.
is. And I don't deny anything you just said. I think you're 100% accurate. However,
Yeah.
like the people like me who we still are saying, right? 'Cause we know what's going on, right?
But you don't seem to mind it. You think Google search is great and you're not going to argue about the DOJ trying to help you. The DOJ is trying to help you.
Just because we know the same people that you
You're
know
worse.
are
You know
bad.
you're drinking the Kool-Aid. You're worse because you know you're drinking
Yes.
the poison
Okay,
in the
that's fine.
Kool-Aid.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
accept that. Yeah. That's
Right.
okay. I will accept that. I
Uh-huh.
am worse because I know I'm drinking that's
Right.
absolutely accurate. Yes. However, in my defense, are you guilty if the train was going there anyway? I'm not guilty in that they picked that destination because I wanted to go there. They were going there anyway. So I'm not really guilty. That train was already going to Sodom, right? Sodom and Gomorrah, and I just hitched a ride.
You're just following orders.
Yeah, just following
Yeah.
orders, but not
Yeah.
recently, right? Like I see that too. I see what you see on that side, right?
Uh-huh.
Which is why it's hard sort of being in that political space right now, is because it's quite contradictory. Because there's a limit for me. There are things where I'd be like, oh no, that's not okay, right? Like we nobody should believe that. But in this instance, yeah, Google's just done such a stand-up job. Leave them, let them, give them search.
Uh-huh.
You know what? Make it easy for them. All the money that everybody else is going to spend on trying to do search, give it to Google and tell them to make it better. Like we got to stop doing this. Like we need better. But I actually think better is collaborative better.
They don't want to collaborate. They want
I
to own
know
the
they
market and
don't.
drain you dry. So this is the thing is like so Republicans have convinced their voters and a good chunk of Americans, and Democrats have been unknowingly alongside this, which is you can't tax the millionaires and the billionaires because the American dream is now one day I could be the millionaire or the billionaire and I wouldn't want to pay for that stuff now. So your opportunity, and this is the point. This is the point of the lie at the central heart of this entire conservative project, is convincing people that someday in the future they could have a thing that systemically, structurally, they will never achieve, because you will never be a millionaire trying to come up with a new tech idea because you have 4 monopolies in charge of 80% of it. So you're rolling the dice that your new tech idea is going to be in the tiny sliver, the 20% that doesn't have a monopoly yet, and you don't get to be that person. They've designed the system to make sure you're never a millionaire, and yet convinced you to vote as if you will someday be a
We
millionaire.
live in the country where a girl who said "Hawk Tua" now
Stole
has
$50 million
now
from people.
has
Yeah.
a manager for her media, right? Like, and whether that's true or not doesn't matter. She could, right, if she wanted to. Like, we have somebody who pretended to be wealthy, scammed a bunch of people, probably cost people their lives, who mentally or physically couldn't carry on because they'd been scammed out of their savings, and they want to put that person on a TV show and reward them monetarily,
Right.
telling her story. It's like,
Dancing with the Stars is a money laundering. It's a money laundering organization, basically. It's a reputation laundering organization. Yeah.
yeah, you're a criminal. That's the country we live in. So
But that's the point, is the system is designed to trick you that out of 330 million of you, here are the 10,000 we've allowed to achieve. It's the Hunger Games. We've allowed them to achieve this great thing. Finnick is looking great and survived the Hunger Games, and we march him around the Capitol dressed in nice clothes and give him a nice mansion to live in. But the point is, no one gets that. The system is designed to elevate those people to trick you into thinking that could be you. Statistically, it's not. You're you're never going to win the lottery. You're never going to become a millionaire through your own bootstraps. That is statistically unlikely. And yet you get tricked into voting and hoping for policies that will never apply to you.
But the American dream has changed. I don't need to go make a startup now. I need my hawk to a moment.
But that's the thing is you didn't used to need to. Your startup could be the little thing that you did in your hometown and it earned you enough money to live comfortably. You've been tricked into thinking that you need to be a millionaire rather than just living comfortably. And so that's exactly what I'm saying is you've been tricked into giving up the original American dream, which was better for your kids than it was for you, living comfortably and being successful at getting your kids to the next level, getting yourself to a happy, non-dust bowl, being 80 and out on the streets life. And instead, everyone's convinced that they need to be the next Hawk-Tuah girl. And at the same time, the systems have been put in place to guarantee you're never going to be the next Hawk-Tuah girl.
The reason why I want to be the Hawk-Tuah girl is because I don't want to work at all.
Sure.
I mean, that's my whole, I just want to read, play guitar, draw, write all day long.
And instead of working to actually help this capitalist system achieve a post-scarcity world, you're just throwing your hands up and saying, well, it's going to suck for everybody for 200 years, but don't worry, my great-grandkids are not going to have to work because they hopefully will survive.
That depends on what I write, right? Like, I would love to take my practical experience of working and write something that does progress. You all hope you write something that's meaningful and lasting and worthwhile, but it would be conscientious. It would be like, hey, here's the problems that I've lived through that I think other people would, benefit from knowing how to deal with. So I think that would be my legacy.
But the average American shouldn't have to hope for a legacy to live comfortably for the rest of their lives and provide better for their family. And that's the problem, is this weird exceptionalism that I need to somehow be wildly successful, massively famous, get my 15 minutes. This is the Campbell Soup, what's his face, everybody gets their 15 minutes of fame. That's bad. Stop it. Just provide a good house for your kids to grow up in and live comfortably in your life, and your success is the love and support of your family and providing better for your children and seeing them have their own kids and knowing that the future is going to be better for everyone. Stop. Why do you need to write a book and be able to pass that along? Why isn't it enough that your kids are happy?
It's hard though, right? Like, because
it shouldn't have to be hard though.
I'm one of those people who can do a really good job of stepping into another person and sort of emotionally, like, how would this make, like, I can do that. I don't think people care though. And it's funny because I could rightly be accused of caring less about humanity than most, right? Whereas, like, I don't care if robots take over, right? Like, that's evolution. It's fine. But I don't think people care. I think there's enough people who
what don't they care about? What are you saying they don't care about?
When you say like I said to someone the other day, we were talking about it was a Brit who was living over here and was like, do you like it over here? And I was like, I do. I like it here. And then we were talking about like the math of being born into a first world country as a white male, right? And then being privileged enough to go to decent schools and have opportunities, right? And stuff like that. I think to myself, like, that's like an incredible minority, right? Like just globally, right? Like most people are either living in poverty or some kind of problem that I will never have to face, right?
Right.
And I don't think most of those people give a shit about these, no names, no faces, right? And this is one of my arguments about paying my taxes every year. And I don't care about paying taxes, I'm okay. But I'd be a lot happier if I was getting some business intelligence that I could look at and say, cool, that's where my money went this year, right? But I'd be even happier. And Isabella and I were just talking about this like in the last 24 hours. If I knew that I started to contribute to Jared's education at 7 and at 15, Jared has an opportunity to go to Europe, but they can't afford it, I would be more apt to pay an extra $2,500 myself to this child to give them an opportunity in life. But I'm never afforded that opportunity because all they do is actually give my taxes to other things, right? And including supporting families. So the whole system's broken, right? Like it's impossible to be empathetic to people you don't even know exist. Oh, that's what people think.
But that's the whole point of a social safety net and a system system that's equitable to everyone is you don't need to think about that. You don't need to worry that Jared needs the extra $2,500 to get a good education. Every kid should get a good education. It shouldn't need to be, private education is bad, actually. The reason private education is so successful is because it has money. So why don't we give money to the public
Do you know what this
education?
reminds me of? And it's funny because it's a controversial subject, but this reminds me of, and it sounds offensive now, but it won't be when I'm finished. This reminds me
Great.
of talking to Democrats and liberals who sort of think like that, right? Is
Uh-huh.
I was in a conversation one night and we were talking about when Natalie is older, and I said, "Yeah, but I don't want her walking around London wearing those clothes late at night. Like Natalie will never do that, right? Like that will be a lot of my advice
Uh-huh.
to her." And somebody said to me, "Yeah, but why should women have to dress that way late at night in the scene?" And I was like, "They shouldn't. However, the reality is this: I'm going to base my decisions on reality, not how life should be. We don't live on a planet where life is the way it should be." And I don't. Again, you and I, we've talked about this in the past. I think the difference between you and I is that you think there's a path to a conscientious society, and I just, oh man, that's so much optimism, Karen. There's enough evidence that we're not like that.
But this is the pro gun control argument that you've just made, which is I have to tell my daughter to not dress in a way that the crappy men will react to because I can't change the underlying human behavior of the crappy men. That is the argument for why you are not going to put in place the thing that changes the violent tendencies of human beings. Your argument is always it's the person that pulls the trigger, and my argument is you're not going to change the mentality of the person who wants to pull the trigger, so let's take away their access to the deadly weapon that they want to use. Literally write a sentence in which take away the trigger that the person wants to use and your daughter wears different clothes at night are the same sentence.
Nah,
You just made an argument that's pro gun
no,
control and you don't even know it.
I,
Yep.
I'm
You're
not. I'm
arguing that
not conceding.
the underlying social issue is crappy men who would do bad things to women is the exact same underlying argument of bad people who are going to use a gun in a bad way. And for some reason, you're willing to tell your daughter to dress differently, but you're not willing to say, then let's enforce gun control differently.
No,
In both
wait a minute.
situations, it's an
No, hang
underlying
on.
problem.
No,
Yeah,
no, no.
dressing differently for your
I
daughter is gun
I
control.
am for I am for stronger gun control.
Uh-huh.
However, I'm
Uh-huh.
not, I'm not down with you coming and taking my guns, right? I mean, I don't have any, but
No one is asked to take your guns. Not that you have any. No, no, no. You don't. The Democratic Party has never once done that. That's a lie from conservative Republicans, Fox News. There's never once been an ask to actually take away guns. Try again. Nope. This is a
I
fact-based
feel like
show.
my guns are constantly being.
Because Fox News lies to you and
I
tells you
don't
that
watch.
it's constantly under
I've
threat.
never watched Fox News, by the way. Just
Well, your entire
no.
conservative ecosystem. Yes, the entire conservative ecosystem invented Obama is coming for your guns. There's a mythical FBI. There was a rumor that the 2020 census was going to be full of people from the IRS who were coming to take your guns. And conservatives live in such a stupid ecosystem of media consumption bubbles that they believed that that was true and bought more
No,
guns in anticipation of it. The NRA has succeeded in juicing gun sales every 5 years by convincing you that a bunch of federal government people are coming to take your guns. They're not. I just want a safety lock
So
on
I'm
it.
joking for the most part when I say the Democrats are coming for my guns. However,
Uh-huh. You exist in an ecosystem where they believe that to their
my
core.
only problem with the gun argument is it's my typical pragmatic logic, which is not new, others have said it, but I can go to Home Depot and I can build myself something or buy myself something that I can kill people with, right? And I could probably get, I'm going to get a lot of people, right? So I'm a mass killer.
The number one victim of gun violence is from suicide. So it is the ease with which we let people who are in a bad place get to it. The person who
Well,
has to think through the assembly of a weird thing from Home
but
Depot
wait a
is
minute, wait a
not.
minute, wait a minute, because I know, and I know this. This is fact. If somebody built a portal where they're like, you drive or walk through that, you will die a painless death, and people, and they could guarantee it, that would become the greatest. That would become become the greatest killer on the
Yes.
planet, right? People kill themselves with
That is the
guns
point, is
because it's
easy.
easy and they
It's
think it's going to
easy
sever
access.
the pain.
Correct.
But if you could,
Correct. That's the whole
I know,
point. Take away their access to that thing and get them the mental health and destigmatize the idea of men having emotions.
yeah, I don't know though, man. I just think,
Yeah.
if you take away guns, people are going to kill them. I'm not saying there'll be as many. I'm just saying people will kill themselves in the second least painful way.
They won't. They've done studies on this. The fact that you
Ah,
have access to the gun and you can do it without thinking is part of the problem. And this is the thing, is explain to me why you have to get trained and licensed to drive a 4-ton death machine, but we don't think that the thing that is just as deadly, in fact more deadly than a car, is a thing that you should just simply have to go take a couple of gun safety courses and get registered with the state. And why is that a problem? It's not the federal government. You'd be registering with your local, if states are so good compared to the federal government, then register with the Mississippi government of blah blah blah. And yeah, it's this weird thing where like, oh, I've got to let my son get a hunting rifle when he's 14. Cool. I would hope you want your kid to know how to shoot that guns correctly. Why is it so bad to say, okay, great, I got it for you as a Christmas gift. New Year's Day, we're gonna go down to the DMV, have you take the course that I've been training you on. People put their kids on their lap and have them drive their car when they're 13. Like this is not a thing that gets in the way of anything other than stopping access to this deadly weapon. Also, by the way, you don't need an AR-15 to hunt a deer or protect your house.
yeah.
Yeah, you don't need, no one needs an AR-15. If you're worried about the federal government showing up and doing something and you want to protect your town, great, then you should register a militia. I'm fully on board with registering a militia and having a little depot in the town square full of AR-15s, but that's got to be like, that's a militia. Fine, have a militia to be protected from the National Guard. Okay, cool.
Here's how I'm just going to kill your argument right now. If
Uh-huh.
someone created the blaster from Star Wars, wouldn't you want one? But no one's going to want you to have a
No.
laser, right? No one's going to be okay with it. Why do you need a gun that fires lasers? But if Star Wars created the blaster, you would want one, right? I would.
No. I know
And I don't,
myself. No, no.
and
What would you shoot with a Star Wars
an
laser?
idea, right? Of course, if I'm not taking my AR-15, I'm taking my laser, I'm taking my blaster.
All right.
But that's the point though, right? Like if they would and talk about like, in your world where we're not sufficiently able to go after the man, it's the man that's really bad, right?
No, I am fully saying if you think you can somehow take the National Guard and the federal government, who no general is going to listen to an order from a president to go and march on civilians, unless there's a chance Trump does that, so I shouldn't necessarily say that. But the point is, a general says, yes, I'm going to send my troops into U.S. soil, which is unconstitutional, and you gotta hope that the person doesn't do that, but fine. We break the Constitution and send federal
What's
troops.
unconstitutional about it?
The Posse Comitatus Act is a United States federal law from June 18th, 1878 by Rutherford B. Hayes that limits the powers of the federal government and the use of federal military personnel to enforce domestic policies within the United States.
Does that mean it's part of the Constitution? I'm not American, so I don't know.
That's fair. It's an act of
Okay,
Congress,
all
which
right.
means
So I'm okay with that.
that's fine. So there's an act of Congress that says you can't have the U.S. military operate on U.S. soil. So at most, you're going to be facing the National Guard. The National Guard is controlled by the governor. Do you really think in your town in Florida or Mississippi or Texas that the governor of your state is going to order the National Guard to attack you? Even if they do, let's say the worst thing possible happens. The last 10, 15, 20 years has seen an increase in the militarization of the police and the National Guard, and they now are equipped with military-grade weaponry and materials and vehicles and all of those kinds of things. Let's say the U.S. generals ignore the Posse Comitatus Act and operate on U.S. soil. They have nukes. They have daisy cutters. They have B-52 bombers. They have jet fighter pilots. Some of those jet fighter pilots can't, those jet planes don't actually fly. We wasted $1 trillion letting a bunch of people make the F-35 or whatever that doesn't actually work. But you're not going to win. You can have your local militia have AR-15s. Cool. Good luck against the U.S. Army.
Yeah, but you don't have to win, right? You don't have to win the war.
And that's fine. I'm saying the average citizen needs to take some classes on safety and register with the state, and the state needs to put some controls in place to make sure domestic abusers and people with criminal records don't get access to guns, that you can't just walk into a Walmart and buy them. And at that point, if you do want an AR-15 because you're a weirdo who's defending against the federal government and you think you're going to do a war of attrition, guerrilla style, to get your point across, then have local militias. The whole point of the Second Amendment, regardless of what frickin' Scalia reread or Thomas reread into the Constitution, it says for the support of a local militia. Great. Town center, the local sheriff has the keys to the bunker full of your AR-15s, and you all can fight against the federal government. Good luck with that. I'm not trying to stop either of those two situations, but we can't be murdering school children and theater goers and
It's a weird
suicides.
conversation because it links closely to the first conversation, right? Which is the radicals could argue, they could argue the sort of the same position as me, which is this is the beginning, but they'll also argue, because they're radicals, is this is why we should have guns, because this is us pushing back against the greedy corporations who are then further defended by the government. In that situation, those radicals are sort of arguing like this is exactly what those weapons are for, right? Now you turn around and say, no, that's murder, right? But
Right.
murder, depending on your political party, like if you're a libertarian or radicalized, some people will actually look at this as some of the rhetoric online, right? Obviously just pissed off people on Reddit and X, but there are people making intellectual arguments as to why this person died, right? And so the radicals will argue that the guns are not just necessarily against the US government, right? And the US Army, they're for just pushing back, right? And in this situation, some of these radicals are arguing, oh, well, this is us pushing back against corporations and government, right? Someone killed a guy.
I think those radicals would be fine with turning it into you got to have a knife or a sword. The bigger issue on guns is like I said earlier, the guillotine always makes a return. It just comes back in different forms. If we had better gun control, the guillotine would still come back. I'm not worried about like that's not a thing. It would become in the 70s they used pipe bombs and a bunch of stuff like that. Like that's not an argument against gun control.
I'm just saying, like, if America got really bad and I had to move across country with 2 kids, yes, if there was no guns on day 0, I'm okay. But if there's a natural disaster in Florida and I have to travel across state with my kids, man, I don't even know. This is America. Like, I don't even know. That's dangerous, right? Like, it would be dangerous. And so I would want my
Yeah, no,
AR-15.
we live in a dystopian, yeah, we live in a horrifying
That's the
situation.
thing. It's not, that's the problem with gun control though too, right? Like I'm gonna need an AR-15 because I'm gonna be going up against other Americans with AR-15s, right?
Right, but we still do, like, I'm gonna sound like freaking the Joker. We do still live in a society. While we still have tenuous grasps on society, why wouldn't we want to claw this back? We are at the whole point of the nuclear Armageddon countdown clock is to point out we haven't reached midnight, we haven't nuked each other off this planet, and there are actions we could take to dial ourselves back to 11:59 and then 11:58 and then 11:50, right? There are actions we could take to dial ourselves back from needing to worry
Yeah.
about the dystopian future. We live in a culture that could choose not to go down this road. We have been
But my last thing was,
uh-huh.
but I always take it back to humans change at the precipice. And I would have thought killing a bunch of
You don't have to go over
toddlers.
the edge. You don't have to go over the edge
Uh-huh.
is the
I
point.
know.
The precipice means you don't have to go over the edge. And
The reason why we haven't had a nuclear bomb, right, go off for nearly 100 years is because we actually used one, and we used 2, and we saw it and we were like, holy shit, right?
that's ahistorical. That happened at the start before the ramping and escalation happened. That's backwards.
American people haven't been shocked enough, and that's scary because there were babies.
How is Sandy Hook
It's not.
Yeah, Sandy Hook should have
It
shocked
should
you, right.
have, and that's my point.
Right.
Is if that didn't shock people into doing something, it's not going to change.
Sure. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us on this episode of Acceptance Criteria. To read articles that we've written on similar topics to the ones we talk about here, head over to the blog at acceptancepod.com.
You can also follow us on most apps. We're at Acceptance Pod. We'll post links to show notes and any articles from the blog on there. We're also building a community on Reddit at r/acceptance criteria. and on Discord. You can find both links in the show notes and on the blog. And I promise we'll be moderating the crap out of them to keep it a nice little slice of the internet.
For now, I'm Kevin Thomas Euland, and you can find me on most apps at kthomaseuland. That's ULLAND.
And I'm Andrew Greener, and you can find me on most apps at Criteria Greener. That's GREINER. And this has been Acceptance Criteria. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to hearing from you.